I'm Kathy Johnson, 67 years old. I live on Social Security, but I reside on the 30th floor of a high-rise in Manhattan. It's not that I come from a wealthy family, nor did I win the lottery. When I was in my teens, I think my family was quite poor. My younger siblings were still little. So after finishing middle school, I started working at a local garment factory to help support the family. Back then, it wasn't uncommon for folks to start working right after middle school. The garment factory where I worked primarily dealt with women's lingerie. As times changed and women started making their mark in the workforce, lingerie evolved from just covering the body to fashionable items that could be flaunted. From everyday wear that doesn't constrict the body to high-end special occasion lingerie. And even shapewear to alleviate body insecurities, the demand surged for various types. By that time, I'd become a seasoned worker and, bringing a woman's touch, had proposed ideas that earned me several Employee of the Month awards. The boss, you once dressed like an old man from Brooklyn's factory districts, gradually started donning high-end branded suits. I got married in my early 30s, a bit late by some standards, and was blessed with a son. My younger siblings grew up, and life became more comfortable, but I continued my work at the garment factory. Above all, I truly loved that job. The company decided to go public, and since I'd been there for so long, the CEO approached me about buying shares. Later on, those shares skyrocketed in value, and that's how I came into a significant amount of money. We were a close-knit family of 3, living in a 2-bedroom apartment. After discussing with my husband, we decided to buy a brand new high-rise condo as our forever home. But before the condo was completed, my husband passed away due to an illness. It somehow feels too big and unsettling. Living here, just the two of us, feels lonely, I told my son, gazing at the city spread out below from our new condo. Then, my son said something I couldn't believe. "Mom, I don't want to move out of our current apartment. Could this really be happening?" When I pressed him for a reason, he hesitated and finally admitted, "I have a fear of heights." I had no idea my son was acrophobic. If I had known, I would have chosen a lower floor. "Why didn't you tell me before we decided?" When I spoke in a blaming tone, he replied, "It was a decision made by Dad and you, right? I thought it'd be fine if both of you wanted to live here. I never imagined Dad would pass away so soon." I genuinely felt the same way. Both of us were deeply saddened. In the end, my son didn't move to the high-rise, but stayed alone in the apartment when the 3 of us had lived together. I lived alone in the tower apartment. But ultimately, the loneliness made me decide to move back to the 2-bedroom apartment filled with memories of my late husband. "You know, you could rent it out," my son suggested. But I wasn't really in need of money. I thought that someday when my son gets married, as his mill, I could live there. But there doesn't seem to be any sign of that happening with my 35-year-old son. Marriage doesn't necessarily equal happiness. But when I think about my son being all alone after I'm gone, especially since he has no siblings, I can't help but wish he had a family. And I must admit, I'd love to see my grandchildren, even if just once. It's my selfish wish, so I've never mentioned it to him. But I heard he's seeing someone, so I wasn't too worried. Then, one day, he said he had a woman he'd like to introduce. I felt like doing a little dance inside, thinking, finally, the day has come. Holding back my excitement, I said, "Oh, is that so? I'm looking forward to it. Will you bring her home?" I'll cook up something special." Blushing a bit, he laughed and said, "Thanks, Mom. I mean, of course I'd be curious, right?" My son, growing redder, said, "Well, she's a colleague of mine, 33 years old, a kind and reliable person." "So, she's the older sister type," I ventured. His eyes widened in surprise. "How'd you know?" he asked. Come to think of it, when he was in daycare, he had a soft spot for the kind caregivers. Even during elementary, middle, and high school, he seemed to have a preference for slightly older girls over the younger, cutesy ones. The celebrities and actresses he admired also tended to be more mature and composed types. It's funny how tastes don't change much over time. I've always thought that such a woman would be a good fit for my laid-back son. A few days later, when I was eagerly awaiting meeting her, my son dropped a bombshell. "Mom, about the other day, things have taken a twist," he said, his face serious and downcast. "Did they break up, perhaps?" "Actually, it seems I've gotten another girl pregnant. I've decided to marry her and take responsibility," he confessed. "What? Hold on a minute. What do you mean?" He was considering marriage with one girl, but he cheated with another and got her pregnant. I was totally blindsided by this unexpected twist. I've got a million questions, but seeing how dejected my son looked, I wasn't sure what to ask or how to approach him. I never expected something like this to happen to my responsible and easygoing son. From what I managed to gather, after a company year-end party last December, my son, heavily intoxicated, woke up in a motel with that girl beside him. And just yesterday, he was told by that girl that she's pregnant. I know my son can't handle his alcohol. Once he drinks, he dozes off pretty quickly. I've often heard of folks blacking out from drinking, so I can't say what happened to him is impossible. "Do you love this girl?" When I asked, he responded, "I don't know, I never really thought about it." "What about the girl you first wanted to introduce to me? Did you talk things over with her?" It was hard to ask, but I felt I had to. I got down on my knees and begged for forgiveness. My son looked so distressed, saying that, "Oh, what a mess this is." He says he's bringing the girl he got pregnant over this coming Sunday. Should I be angry or should I be sad? Suddenly having a grandchild on the way, I wasn't sure if it's something I should be happy about or not. If we get married, should I move over there? I've heard that many feel reluctant about moving into a home with just a mother and her son. Then, my son replied, "No, she's young and probably has many worries. Can you help and be there for her for a while?" Given the circumstances, I thought I'd do my best to assist. "Also, Mom, please don't mention the penthouse. If she knows, she'll definitely want to live there." It seems he really doesn't want to live there. I chuckled and nodded in agreement. Sunday came in the blink of an eye. "Mom, let me introduce you to Kelsey." Seeing the girl he introduced, I was quite taken aback. I knew she was 23 from what my son told me, but at first glance, she looked like she could be in her teens. I always thought my son had a preference for older, mature types. I wonder if as he's gotten older, he's become more attracted to younger girls. Such a cliched thought, but that's how surprising it was to me. She's a very cute girl with big eyes, but when my son introduced her, she just gave a slight nod, seeming a bit aloof. I couldn't help but notice her continually glancing around the room, seemingly checking everything out. Oh dear. Could this be the notorious Mill syndrome I've heard so much about? I always thought I'd never be like that, But maybe not having a great first impression of my son's fiancé is a symptom of that. Kelsey, I'm Tsamugu's mom. I'm not sure what to say given the circumstances, but no, I'm here to support you too. If there's anything I can do, just let me know. Even with my warm smile and words, Kelsey just responded with a half-hearted She barely touched the heartfelt homemade dishes I prepared, and didn't offer any feedback. I hate to say it, but her table manners left a lot to be desired. I wondered if this was just me being overly critical as a mill and felt guilty about it. Despite the awkwardness, we decided to visit Kelsey's house next week for introductions. When my son returned after dropping Kelsey off, I mentioned, "She's quite a lovely young lady, and she looks so young." He looked a bit troubled and said, "At work, I've been teased a lot. They joked if I had a thing for younger girls. Some female colleagues even gave me cold looks." Since his girlfriend worked at the same company, the situation must be extremely awkward for both of them. I feel terrible when I think of her. I can understand that. Kelsey's home seemed like an average family's, resembling a typical 3-bedroom condo. The strong-willed mother and serious-looking father clearly adored their daughter. That's probably why they were a bit tough on both my son and me. But then I overheard something. On my way back from using the bathroom, I heard Kelsey's mother in the kitchen saying, "I had hoped she'd marry someone from a family where both parents graduated from college. Instead, she's marrying a guy almost middle-aged, with a high school dropout mother living on Social Security. I don't regret starting work right after middle school, and I'm proud of the life I've led. I realized that our values were different from this family's, and it did bring my spirits down." Though her parents tried to convince their only daughter to have a wedding, her adamant "I'm too sick from morning sickness" left them no choice but to agree. Yet, their attitude suggested they blamed it all on my son, Tyler. I was mentally exhausted after leaving Kelsey's house, but she's set to move into our home next week. I couldn't help but wonder if things would work out in the future. My fears would soon be realized. Where did she intend to put that massive dresser? "Kelsey, this dresser won't work." When I said that, she pouted and replied, "But Mom said to bring it. She bought it for me, after all." But some things just aren't feasible. If we bring in this dresser, you'll end up laying down mattresses in the living room to sleep, you know. After hearing that, she seemed to reluctantly give up on the idea of the dresser. But her belongings weren't limited to just the dresser. All those clothes, bags, shoes, and every single one of them are high-end brands. No matter how indulgent her parents might be, it's shocking they've bought her all of this. "Wow, these are mostly designer brands, aren't they?" When I mentioned that, she retorted nonchalantly, "Isn't that normal? Don't you own any?" "Well, I'm not that interested in them." It wasn't sour grapes on my part, but Kelsey momentarily had a smug look on her face. After a snort, she said, "Figures. In any case, there's no place to store all these luxury items." Then Kelsey suggested, "Why don't you get rid of those toys and DVDs over there?" The toys she referred to are the model kits my son livingly assembled since he was a kid. They are neatly lined up on a shelf. Sure. My son had a substantial collection of his favorite books and movies on DVD. But to dispose of them just to make room for her stuff seemed quite harsh. But my son, being the understanding person he is, said, "You're right. I'll get rid of them. We'll have more stuff when we have kids anyway." I beckoned him closer and whispered, asking if he was genuinely okay with it. Hearing his resigned tone saying it couldn't be helped, I blurted out, "You don't have to dispose of anything. I'll keep that stuff at my place." There was plenty of space left, but my son kept apologizing to me repeatedly. By the time we managed to clear a sleeping area, it was past 9 in the evening. Thinking it was too late for a heavy meal, I boiled some noodles. Kelsey neither helped with the preparations nor cleaned up. After eating, she quickly took a bath and went straight to bed. The next morning, even when it was time for my son to leave for work, Kelsey didn't wake up. My son had the breakfast I prepared and said, "It seems she's having severe morning sickness. Please take care of her," before heading out. Kelsey finally woke up a little past 10 a.m. Looking at the breakfast spread on the table, she remarked, "No way, I can't." I couldn't tell what she found untrue or impossible to eat. "Fish and fermented beans for breakfast," she muttered. "I see. She seems to have a hard time with traditional Japanese breakfasts. Would bread have been better? I'll make sure to have that tomorrow." When I said that, she retorted, "Actually, I hate fermented beans. I can't even look at them. Can you put them away because of the smell?" in a rather commanding tone. She never said things like "I'm sorry for not eating what you prepared" or "I can't handle fermented beans." My apologies, or even "I'll make breakfast next time." Is it because I'm the mill that I feel this way? From a daughter-in-law's perspective, perhaps I seem like the mill pushing foods she dislikes onto her. "It's past breakfast time. What would you like for lunch?" Trying to change the mood, I asked that, to which she replied, "I'm going out, no need." She quickly went to the bathroom to do her makeup, got ready, and left. I thought she was suffering from morning sickness. I sighed, wrapped up the breakfast I'd prepared for Karen, and ate it for my lunch. The next afternoon, I said, "I'm going to a community center near the train station. If possible, could Karen prepare dinner?" Actually, I teach twice a week at a community center near the train station. Drawing on the skills I honed at a sewing factory, I instruct in dressmaking. Tuesdays are classes for absolute beginners. You might have never even touched a sewing machine. On Fridays, I conduct more advanced sessions, where students learn to use patterns to create garments. No, you've got it wrong. I don't go there to learn. I'm the one teaching. It's a dressmaking class. After explaining, Karen looked shocked for a moment and then, with a hint of disdain, said, "Oh, so even if you only finished middle school, you can be a teacher." I thought I knew her perspective, but that remark truly hurt. I felt a deep malice from her. When I got home that day, there was a delivered pizza on the living room table. Karen heads out 2 or 3 times a week. Whether it's for shopping, meeting friends, or going to the hair salon, and doesn't lift a finger at home. When she's home, she's either locked in her room fiddling with her smartphone or just sleeping. There were times when my son came home, but Karen wasn't back yet. Just as I began to worry, my son's phone rang. It was her saying she'd be staying at her parents' house for the night. Well, it would be nice if she'd let me know when she plans to go out. If she did that, I wouldn't have to worry, and our dinners wouldn't go to waste. Well, it must have been hard for her to go back to her parents so soon after moving in with us, my son remarked. But this wasn't the first time such a thing had happened. Once, I overheard her talking to a friend on her phone. Right, she says she's a sewing class instructor. But with that old lady's sense of style, I bet the students feel bad. Probably just desperate because her social security isn't enough. She laughed heartily after saying that. I couldn't help but feel incredibly hurt. Despite everything, I wanted to get along with her and was ready to make every effort. I never spoke ill of Kelly to my son, but occasionally, he'd look concerned and ask, "Mom, you okay? You've seemed down lately." It made me both happy and sad that he cared. I felt like apologizing for not getting along with his wife. One day, I surprised her with a gift. It was a handmade maternity dress. I had consulted with a young lady from my class, and she assured me she'll absolutely love this. I'll never forget the look on Kelly's face when she unwrapped it and held up the dress. "What is this?" Seeing she wasn't pleased, my heart sank as I replied, "It's a maternity dress. I made it myself." Then she retorted, "This makes you look super fat, doesn't it? It's designed to be roomy so you can wear it even as your belly grows." I tried to explain. But Kelly continued, "Homemade stuff is so creepy, feels like it's filled with bad vibes or something." Bad vibes? When have I ever harbored any resentment towards my daughter-in-law? I've gifted handmade clothes and accessories to close friends many times before, but I'd never encountered such a reaction. Even knowing our values differed, it felt like not just my skills, but my entire way of life was being rejected. I was on the verge of tears. I thought I couldn't live with Kelly anymore. I sensed she probably felt the same way. At the thought of leaving my son and a Kelly who doesn't lift a finger around the house together was deeply unsettling. "Kelly, you married Jake because you loved him, right?" I asked her that. "What, out of the blue?" "Well, yeah, I guess." I wasn't sure whether to believe her words or not. With such an age gap, what made you fall for him? If Kelly truly loved my son, I believed they could make it on their own. "Isn't it his kindness?" Kelly responded as if talking about someone else. Still, I decided to trust Kelly when she said my son was kind. "I'm thinking of leaving this place. You two can manage on your own, right?" A brief look of joy flashed across Kelly's face. She probably thought she'd be better off without an intruder. "Can you handle cooking, cleaning, and laundry? Are you sure you'll be okay?" Those words came from concern, but it seemed to have touched a nerve with Kelly. "You've been doing all that stuff by choice, haven't you? I can do it too." If she felt that strongly about it, there was nothing more for me to say. "I'll have my belongings moved out later. Please take care of my son." As I bowed my head and began to leave, Kelly's words pierced my back. "Well, if he ever comes crying back to us, we're cutting ties, LOL, goodbye." Whether she meant it or not, I didn't have the energy to confront her anymore. When I returned to my penthouse in New York, I got a call from my son. "Mom, what's going on?" It seems Kelly had fed him her convenient excuses and bad-mouthed me. "I'm sorry for not getting along with your wife. Seems like Mom's just a bit worn out." It took everything in me to say that. In my spacious penthouse in New York, where I didn't have to worry about bothering anyone, I'd invite friends for tea or sew using my sewing machine, but my spirits didn't lift. I secretly yearned to maybe sew my son a tuxedo if he got married, or make lots of clothes if he had a child. Thinking of these wishes made me feel pitiful. Then, one day after a class I was teaching, a woman approached me. "You're Logan's mother, aren't you?" The moment she spoke in her calm, slightly low voice, I recognized her as the girlfriend my son had broken up with after begging her on his knees. Long black hair and light makeup. She seemed strong-willed and solid, just the type of woman who could be described as a big sister figure. I couldn't help but think, if only my son had brought her home. "I used to date Logan, and my name is Sally. Would it be okay if we talked for a bit?" With her invitation, we went to a cafe downstairs. As soon as we took our seats, I lowered my head to apologize to her. I'm so sorry for everything that's happened. No matter how much my son and I apologize, it'll never be enough for what we did to you. Sally, raising her hand as if to stop me, hurriedly interjected, "Please, don't apologize. There's nothing for you to be sorry about." Then, with a determined look, she said, "You might not believe me, but I think the baby in your daughter-in-law's belly isn't Logan's." For a moment, I was at a loss for words. Could such a thing even be possible? If that's true, then both my son and I have been deceived. But why? According to Sally, ever since Jane started her job, she was involved with a married department head, and their affair was an open secret among female employees. Word was that the lavish designer gifts she sported were from him. I think Logan, who's often out on field work, didn't know about this, she said. That makes sense. If he had known, this situation would never have happened. However, I reluctantly asked, could it have been a mistake after drinking? Sally replied, "Logan can't handle his liquor, right? I've had drinks with him multiple times, but nothing of that sort ever happened afterward," she confessed, blushing. Still finding it hard to believe such an absurd story, Sally gave me the clincher. "Jane still meets with the department head once or twice a week," she stated. Inside was a cozy snapshot of Jane and a middle-aged man I didn't recognize, but that wasn't all. Pictures of the two entering a hotel, coming out of the hotel, and others where they were closely snuggled up filled the envelope. So that's what those outings were about. Maybe her overnight stays, claiming she was at her parents' house. My head started to spin. Seeing me in shock, Sally said, "I'm sorry. I took it upon myself to hire a pie. I just couldn't forgive her." She had tears in her eyes as she spoke. I realized, this woman still deeply cares for my son. I can't forgive her either, but why? If the baby she's carrying belongs to that manager, why did she marry my son? I just couldn't understand. She probably wanted to have the manager's child. But she couldn't marry him because he already has a family. She wasn't ready to face the social stigma, nor to become a single mom. So, Sally bit her lip in frustration as she spoke. It seems my son was her fallback plan. Even though he might be a bit of a dreamer and laid back, taking advantage of his kind nature like this is absolutely unforgivable. Tom only begged me for forgiveness, without explaining the situation. If he had just been honest. If only Tom had spoken to Sally honestly at that time, I could have stopped all of this. So that's why they rushed the paperwork without having a wedding ceremony, I thought. I've made up my mind. I can't let things continue this way. Sally, thank you so much. Let me handle it from here, and if it's not too much to ask, could you please stand by Tom for just a little while longer? It was a sincere request from my heart. Yes. Seeing Sally's smile, on the verge of tears, I knew I had to settle things for her sake, and, more importantly, for my son Tom's. I called Tom and arranged to meet him after his work. When he heard the full story from me, he was in shock, muttering, "I've been taken for a ride." Still, I thought there's a chance that the child might be his. It's not 100% certain. Considering they're married, he might have developed feelings for her. But hearing Tom say, "Well, we haven't been intimate since the wedding," left me feeling a mix of pity and relief. More importantly, did Sally seem okay? She's always pushing her limits. It seems his heart already belongs to Sally. For your happiness with Sally, you have to be firm, I told him. Tom nodded in agreement. A few days later, Tom brought a woman named Lucy to my place. Apparently, she was overjoyed when invited to dine at a high-rise near the train station. The first 3 floors of this building have businesses, with most necessities available, and there are also renowned restaurants. Lucy, assuming they were dining there, was flustered when Tom headed for the residential elevators, asking, "Where are you going? Why are you entering there on your own?" "Welcome, please come in." I greeted her, dressed a bit fancier than usual, adorned with some chic jewelry. Even after stepping inside and seeing me, Lucy still seemed clueless about the situation. "Ah, Robert, your stuff is right there." A part of the spacious living room displays Robert's collection. Upon seeing that, Lucy finally seemed to catch on, confronting Robert. "You're kidding, right? Seriously, what's going on? Why are you living in this high-rise?" Robert, feigning innocence, replied, "Well, 'cause this is the condo Mill bought." Lucy's eyes sparkled instantly. Rushing to the window, she pulled back the curtains, gazing at the sprawling cityscape below, and sighed. "Goodness, who exactly are you, Mill?" Suddenly, she approached me in a flirtatious tone I'd never heard before. "Yes, it's the condo I bought. Surprising that a high school dropout like me living on pension can afford a place like this, ho." I meant it sarcastically, but Lucy seemed unfazed. "So if it's your condo, it'll eventually be Robert's, right? Oh, given its size, I should move out of that crummy apartment and live here." She probably forgot all about saying she'd cut ties. But Robert chimed in, spoiling her mood. "I won't live here." "I don't like high places," Lucy exclaimed. "What are you talking about? If you don't stay, I will." "I doubt that'll happen. After all, you're not going to be my daughter-in-law or even his wife anymore." Upon hearing that, Lucy retorted, "What are you on about? I got pregnant because of your son. I had to quit my job. Don't you think that's a bit much, messing up someone's life like that?" Robert calmly responded, "Seems like you're the one trying to mess up lives, aren't you?" He then spread out a set of divorce papers and several incriminating photos in front of Lucy. "What? Hold on, wait a minute, what's all this?" But, the baby in my belly is your child. So, I have rights." Lucy argued persistently. "The child might have rights, but I don't think someone who cheated, like you, does." Robert responded firmly yet calmly. "If we do a DNA test on the baby once it's born, and it turns out to be mine, I'll pay child support, alimony, whatever you need. If you can't raise it, I'll take custody and raise it myself. Of course, I plan to fully support him during that time." Though I doubted it would ever come to that. Finally realizing her stubbornness was getting her nowhere, Lucy left the room, glaring resentfully at me and Robert, clutching the divorce papers. The whole thing left a bitter taste, but I believed that Robert and I could finally reclaim our lives. The next day, we received quite a complaint from Lucy's parents. But after presenting the evidence and explaining the situation, they were visibly shocked. Yet, out of love for their daughter and unborn grandchild, they decided to take Lucy in and care for her at their home. Later on, Lucy gave birth safely. Surprisingly, she stormed into her workplace with her newborn, demanding that her manager marry her. Word got around to the company's higher-ups, and that manager was demoted and relocated to a different city. His wife handed him divorce papers and sought compensation. She brought it upon herself, so I have little sympathy. Yet, rumor has it Lucy still followed that manager. Maybe her love for him was genuine. Who knows what the future holds, but I genuinely hope the child, who was once going to be our grandchild, finds happiness. There's an uneasy feeling with Lucy around. She seems like a jinx, bringing misfortune wherever she goes. As for Robert, he happily reconciled with Sarah and just recently proposed. He told us he asked her, "I'm divorced now, but would you marry me?" A rather casual proposal. They both mentioned wanting a low-key wedding since they are both over 30. But I interjected, "No secret courthouse weddings. I've always dreamt of sewing my daughter-in-law's dress." Sarah was genuinely thrilled with the idea. The newlyweds' home has one issue: Robert's fear of heights. "If I just close the curtains and don't look outside, I'll manage." That's what Robert says, but he still seems uneasy, and I can't help but feel sorry for him. Currently, Sarah, Robert, and I are considering moving to a lower floor. The view from the 30th floor was great, but nothing compares to the couple's happiness. It seems like it won't be long before I get to meet my real grandchild.